Today's compelling story introduces us to the case of David, a devoted father, and Max, his loyal dog. It all began when David moved to a quiet neighborhood with his 5-year-old daughter, Lily. Seeking safety and peace, he instead encountered nights full of tension. Max, usually gentle and protective, started behaving strangely. Every night, he growled at Lily's bedroom door, as if trying to warn them about something. David tried to brush it off, thinking it was just ordinary dog behavior, until Lily started waking up scared, saying she'd seen a strange man in her room. Determined to understand what was happening, David installed cameras, and what he discovered would rob any parent of sleep. Get ready for a story of courage, instinct, and the power of a bond that can save lives. But before I reveal this incredible story, make sure to subscribe to the channel so you can access real stories that will make you laugh, cry, and reflect. David parked the car in the garage for the first time. He looked at the front of their new house, letting out a long sigh. Lily, his 5-year-old daughter, was in the back seat, clutching one of the toys she had insisted on bringing during the move. "Dad, is this our new house?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Yes, Princess." "Our new home," David replied, forcing a smile. Max, the German Shepherd, barked from the seat next to her as if agreeing. David gave the dog a light pat. It was a quiet neighborhood with wide streets and tall trees. The surrounding houses were well kept, and children played at the end of the street. After months of chaos following the divorce, David felt he had finally found the right place for a fresh start. As they unloaded boxes, Max ran around the yard, sniffing every corner. Lily laughed as she watched the dog try to chase a squirrel that disappeared over the fence. "This yard is all ours, Max," she shouted excitedly. At the end of the day, with boxes scattered all over the living room, David and Lily sat on the floor eating pizza straight out of the box. "Dad, can I sleep with the hallway light on?" Lily asked. "Of course, Princess, but Max will watch over you. He never lets anything bad happen." As if he understood, Max lay down beside Lily, resting his head on her lap. David felt a small sense of relief. Everything was fine. He knew he had chosen this place to ensure Lily had a happy childhood, surrounded by safety. That night, while David was tidying up in the kitchen, he heard a low growl coming from the hallway. "Max, what is it now?" he asked, drying his hands on a towel. The dog was standing in front of Lily's bedroom door, his body tense and his gaze fixed on the door. David chuckled and scratched Max's head. "You're just getting used to the new house. Relax, buddy." Max continued to stare at the room, but eventually lay down on the floor, remaining alert. David turned off the lights and went to bed, unaware of what that night would bring to his family. The first few nights in the new house followed a pattern David didn't understand. Always around 3 a.m., Max started growling. It was a low sound, almost like a warning, but enough to wake David, who got up to check what was going on. He found Max sitting in the hallway, right in front of Lily's door, staring intently at it. "What is it now, buddy?" David asked on the third consecutive night, rubbing his eyes. "Are you protecting Lily, even in her sleep?" The dog glanced at him briefly but didn't move. David slowly opened Lily's door. Inside, she was sleeping soundly, her small hand clutching her pink blanket. Nothing seemed out of place. David sighed and scratched Max behind the ears. "Okay, boy, I guess you're still adjusting." He returned to bed, but Max's behavior didn't stop there. The next night, the growling came earlier. David was already on alert when he heard Max's nails lightly scratching the floor. This time, he decided to observe from a distance. Standing in the hallway, he watched the dog, trying to understand what was bothering him so much. Max was motionless, like a sentinel. The low growl continued, his eyes fixed on the door. David looked around, but the house was completely silent. Shaking his head, he returned to his room, convincing himself it was just a dog thing. "He's confused. New house, new smells. It's fine," he murmured, but it started to get to him. During the day, Max was his usual loving self. He ran around the yard, played with Lily, and followed David around the house, wagging his tail as if nothing had happened. But as soon as night fell, his strange behavior resumed. At breakfast, David brought it up to Lily. "Max likes being in my room. I think he wants to protect me," she said with a shrug, munching on a piece of bread. David laughed, but her words stuck with him, Protect her from what? Trying to rationalize it, David convinced himself it was nothing unusual. Another night, 3 a.m. The sound of Max's growl echoed through the hallway, but this time, something was different. David, already accustomed, lazily got up, but when he reached the hallway, he saw that Max wasn't just sitting as usual. The dog was standing, his body rigid like a statue, ears pointed forward and eyes locked on Lily's door. His breathing was heavy, the growl deeper and more urgent. "Max!" David called, frowning. Max didn't even glance at him. He stepped forward, sniffing the air around him as if something was wrong. His tail was low, and the fur on his back was standing on end. "What's going on, boy?" David asked, his tone more serious this time. David opened Lily's door slowly. She was sleeping like an angel, but Max pushed his way in, positioning himself beside her bed. His gaze fixed on the window as if expecting something. "Are you crazy?" David whispered, pulling Max by his collar. "What are you looking at?" Max resisted for a moment but reluctantly left the room. However, he didn't go far. He sat in the hallway, his eyes locked on the door, growling softly. In the following days, the tension grew. Max was on high alert throughout the night. He sniffed the hallway, paced back and forth, and stared at the windows as if sensing something or someone outside. David started paying more attention, but still tried to convince himself there was a logical explanation. "He's probably smelling an animal outside. A raccoon, maybe," he told himself. But the explanation didn't reassure him. Why did Max only react near Lily's room? One night, when the growling started again, David tried to calm him down. "All right, buddy, enough. There's nothing here." He went around the house, checking all the windows and doors. They were locked. Nothing was out of place. When he returned to the hallway, Max was still in the same position, his breathing heavy, as if guarding something. David sighed. "You're driving me crazy, you know that." But deep down, an uneasy feeling began to grow. Something was wrong, even if he didn't know what. It was almost 2 a.m. when David heard a faint cry coming from Lily's room. He got up quickly, tripping over a pair of shoes on the floor, and rushed to the hallway. Max was there, sitting firmly by the door, tense but silent. "Lily, what's wrong, sweetheart?" he asked, carefully opening the door. Lily was sitting on her bed, clutching her pink blanket, her face wet with tears. When she saw her father, she held out her arms, and David quickly sat beside her. "What happened, my love?" "I had the dream again. About that strange man," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. David frowned. "What man, princess?" "He comes into my room. He stands near my bed, but Max doesn't let him get close," she said, pointing to the dog, now standing by the door as if on guard. David felt a chill run down his spine. He pulled Lily closer, stroking her hair. "It's just a dream, sweetheart. Everything's okay, all right? Max is here to take care of you, and so am I." "But it was real, Dad. I saw him," she insisted, her wide eyes filled with fear. David tried to hide his concern. It was just a child's imagination, right? The move, the new environment, it could all be making Lily nervous. He kissed her forehead and tucked her back in, adjusting the blanket around her. "Listen, Max is like a superhero, and he's here to make sure nothing bad happens. Now go back to sleep, okay?" Lily nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. As David turned off the light, she whispered, "Dad, did you lock the windows?" David paused for a moment, his heart tightening. "Yes, princess. Everything is locked." He closed the door gently, but when he turned around, he saw that Max was still there, standing, his eyes fixed on Lily's window. The next morning at breakfast, David tried to bring it up again. "Lily, tell me more about the man from your dream." She looked at her father thoughtfully, pushing her cereal around with a spoon. "He wears a dark coat and moves slowly, but Max always growls at him. Then he goes away." David forced a smile. "I think you're just scared because of the move. That's normal, but I promise nothing bad is going to happen, okay?" "Okay," Lily replied, but her expression remained skeptical. Deep down, David tried to convince himself it was just nightmares. But the next night, when Max growled again and Lily woke up crying, he started to wonder if it really was just that. One afternoon, David arrived home feeling the familiar relief of another workday coming to an end. He parked the car, grabbed his briefcase, and entered through the front door. Max, as always, was there to greet him, but something about the dog's behavior was different. Usually, Max wagged his tail and jumped around him, eager for attention, but now he seemed restless, running back and forth in the hallway leading to Lily's room. "What is it, boy?" David asked, puzzled. Max let out a small whine, then went to Lily's room and stopped in front of the door, nudging it slightly with his nose. David noticed the door was ajar. He was certain he had closed it before leaving that morning. "Lily, did you go into your room?" David called out as he opened the door. He took a quick glance around the room. Everything seemed to be in its place. The bed was made, the toys were in the chest, and the window was shut, just as he had left it. Yet something felt off. Lily came running from the living room, holding one of the drawings she had made at school. "Daddy, look at what I drew," she said excitedly. David smiled but kept his focus on the room. "Princess, did you go into your room again after I locked it?" Lily shook her head, confused. "No, I was playing in the living room the whole time." David frowned and looked at Max, who was still uneasy, sniffing the floor near Lily's bed. "Are you sure? The door was open." "I didn't go in there, Daddy," Lily insisted. He walked over to the window and checked the latch. It was locked, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. "Must have been the wind," he murmured, trying to convince himself. Lily tugged on his sleeve. "Didn't you like my drawing?" David crouched to her level, forcing a smile. "Of course I did, Princess. Show it to me again." As she explained the details of her drawing, David glanced back at Max, who was still standing at the doorway, suspicious, as if he knew something David didn't. Before going to bed, David closed Lily's door more carefully than usual. He checked the house's windows and doors twice before finally lying down. Yet the image of the ajar door kept replaying in his mind. David couldn't sleep well that night. He tossed and turned, hearing Max pacing back and forth in the hallway. The dog's behavior, the open door, Lily's nightmares. Everything seemed disconnected yet unsettling. The next morning, while having coffee, the decision finally came to him. "That's it. I'm getting cameras," he said, almost to himself. Lily, busy drawing at the kitchen table, looked up curiously. "Cameras, Daddy? Why?" David smiled, trying to keep the tone light. "Just so we can be safer, Princess, and so I can see what Max does when we're not watching." Lily shrugged and returned to her doodling. Later that day, David purchased the equipment. He installed a camera in the hallway, another in the living room, and with some hesitation, placed one in Lily's room, pointing toward the window. As he adjusted the last device, Max stood by his side, watching intently. "All set, boy," David said, patting the dog's head. "Let's see what you've been sniffing around at night." That night before bed, David checked the cameras on his phone. The images were clear, and he could monitor the entire house from wherever he was. "All good," he murmured, more to reassure himself than out of necessity. When the clock struck 3 in the morning, Max's familiar growl echoed in the hallway. David got up immediately and grabbed his phone. His heart raced as he opened the camera app. In the hallway, the footage showed Max in his usual guard stance, growling softly at Lily's door. David switched to the camera in her room. Lily slept peacefully, a small figure almost motionless under the covers. He sighed in relief. "Must be nothing, Max," he muttered. "Just bad dreams." But even as he tried to convince himself, the doubt lingered. What if Max really was sensing or seeing something he couldn't? David set his phone on the nightstand and lay back down, but he couldn't relax. The feeling of being watched grew even stronger. He didn't know that soon, the footage from the cameras would turn his doubt into sheer terror. David woke early that morning. Something inside him urged him to review the camera footage. With a cup of coffee in hand, he sat at the table and opened the app on his phone. The first few hours of recording showed nothing unusual. Max patrolled the hallway, sniffing as always while David and Lily slept. But around 3:15 a.m., he saw something that made his heart race. In the footage from Lily's room, the window, which had been closed, slowly began to open. David paused the video. "No, that's not possible," he murmured, his hands trembling. He hit play again and with his heart pounding, saw a figure climbing through the window. It was a man. He wore a dark jacket and moved carefully, trying not to make a sound. David held his breath as he watched. The man began approaching Lily's bed, but before he could take another step, Max sprang into action. The dog charged, growling loudly, and jumped between the intruder and the bed. The man backed away, but Max didn't relent. He stood his ground, teeth bared, ready to attack. The intruder took another step back, stumbled, and hurriedly climbed back out the window he had entered through. David couldn't believe what he was seeing. His entire body shook. He replayed the footage several times, each time trying to process what he had just witnessed. Max had protected Lily. He hadn't just reacted randomly. He knew. The dog's behavior over the past few weeks now made perfect sense. David looked at Max, lying near the kitchen door. The dog raised his head as if sensing his owner's gaze. "Max, you saved my daughter," David said, his voice trembling. He knew he had to act quickly. He picked up the phone and called the police, reporting what he had seen. While waiting for the officers to arrive, he couldn't take his eyes off Max. "You're a hero, boy, a real hero." In the days that followed, the sense of security David once felt was gone. But at the same time, he knew he could count on Max. The dog wasn't just a companion, he was the reason Lily was safe that night. David couldn't shake the camera footage from his mind. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the man entering through the window and approaching Lily's bed. Worse still was remembering the nights Lily cried, saying she had seen a strange man. Sitting on the couch with his head in his hands, Max lay at his feet as if knowing something was still unresolved. Lily played on the floor, distracted with her dolls. "Lily," he called, trying to keep his voice steady. "Yes, Daddy?" she replied without looking up, focused on her puzzle pieces. David took a deep breath. "Do you remember that man from your dreams? The one you always said you saw in your room?" Lily stopped playing and looked at him with wide eyes. "I remember. What else can you tell me about him? Did he say anything? Did he do anything?" She thought for a moment and shook her head. "He didn't say anything. He just stood by the window. Then he came near my bed, but Max never let him get close to me." The knot in David's stomach tightened. He swallowed hard and continued. "Are you sure he was there? It didn't just feel like a dream?" Lily shook her head firmly. "I saw him, Daddy, even when I was awake." David felt a mix of fear and guilt welling up inside him. He had always thought they were just nightmares caused by the change. But now he knew Lily had been telling the truth all along. She didn't have the words to explain it, but she had seen the real man night after night. He got up and went to her, kneeling beside her and holding her small hands. "Lily, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you." She frowned, confused. "Why?" David pulled her into a hug. "Because you were right, my love. But you know what? Max took care of you, and I promise nothing will ever happen to you again." As Lily smiled, reassured by her father's words, David glanced at Max. The dog returned his gaze with that protective air David now fully understood. He knew he had to make Lily feel safe again, and that he would never ignore Max's instincts again. After talking to Lily, David knew he couldn't delay any longer. He spent the rest of the afternoon reinforcing the house's security. Every lock was checked, all the windows were reinforced, and he installed bars to ensure no one could enter again. "Max, you keep watch while I finish this up, okay?" he said, looking at the dog, who sat near the door, as vigilant as ever. David handed over all the camera footage to the police, detailing what he had seen. "Is this enough to identify the intruder?" David asked, his worry evident in his voice. The officer, after watching the video, nodded. "We'll investigate further. He might already be in our system. We'll also increase patrols in your neighborhood. You did the right thing installing these cameras." Even with the security measures in place and the police aware, David couldn't relax. That night felt different. Every sound seemed amplified. Every creak of the house made his heart race. He sat on the couch with Max by his side, monitoring the cameras on his phone. "Looks like it's just you and me in this, huh, buddy?" he murmured, patting Max's head. The dog was alert, his ears twitching at every noise, as if expecting something to happen. Lily was asleep in her room, finally looking peaceful, but David hadn't closed his eyes all night. He kept alternating between watching Max and checking the security camera footage repeatedly. Around 3 in the morning, Max suddenly lifted his head. David froze, following the dog's gaze toward the hallway. "What is it now?" he whispered. Max stood up, walked to the living room door and stopped, sniffing the air. David grabbed his phone, preparing to check the cameras again. But after a few seconds, Max relaxed and returned to David's side, as if nothing had happened. "You're making me even more paranoid," David said with a nervous smile, though deep down, he was grateful to have the dog by his side. That night, he realized that no matter how much physical security he installed, the greatest reassurance came from Max's infallible instincts. Max wasn't just a protector, he was the true guardian of the home. 2 days later, David's phone rang early in the morning. Seeing the caller ID, his heart raced. It was the police station. "Mr. David, this is Officer Parker. We have news about the case." "Did you find the man?" he asked anxiously. "Yes, we did. The man from the footage is a known criminal, wanted for breaking into multiple homes in the area. Your footage helped confirm his identity, and we arrested him last night." David felt a mix of relief and shock. My God, he was targeting my house. But why? On the other end of the line, Parker paused before answering. "From what we've gathered, he'd been watching your house for weeks. We believe he was waiting for a moment of carelessness, but it seems he didn't anticipate your dog." David looked at Max, sitting near the door, as attentive as ever. "Max, he was the only reason nothing worse happened, wasn't he?" "It seems so, Mr. David. Your dog prevented him from getting into your daughter's room during all his attempts. He's a real hero." After hanging up, David sat in silence for a moment, processing what he'd just heard. Then he crouched down next to Max and looked into his eyes. "Buddy, you saved our family." Max tilted his head as if he understood, then licked David's hand. Later, David explained everything to Lily in a way she could understand, without being frightened. "You know, sweetheart, that man won't bother us anymore. The police took him away." Lily looked at Max, who was sitting beside them, and smiled. "Max saved me, didn't he?" David nodded, smiling with pride and gratitude. "He sure did, sweetheart. He's our hero." The news of the intruder's arrest brought a sense of relief David had never felt before. But above all, it underscored that Max wasn't just a dog. He was a true guardian. That evening, David made a special dinner for Max, complete with a big piece of steak. Lily insisted on drawing a picture of him wearing a superhero cape. They placed the drawing on the fridge, where it remained as a constant reminder that heroes come in all forms, even with 4 legs and a bark. In the days following the intruder's arrest, the house returned to being a peaceful place. But things were different. David couldn't look at Max without feeling immense gratitude. One morning, as Lily ate her cereal, David watched the dog lying at her feet, ever vigilant. Max didn't need to be as alert anymore, but he still kept his protective gaze, especially around Lily. "Dad, has Max always been this awesome?" Lily asked, laughing, as she offered the dog a piece of bread. David smiled, patting the German Shepherd's head. "He's always been incredible. We just didn't notice it before." Later that day, David decided to take some time to play with Max in the backyard, something he hadn't done in a while. Holding a ball, he called out, "Come on, buddy, you deserve some fun." Max dashed across the lawn like a rocket, catching the ball mid-air with impressive precision. Lily soon joined in, laughing and jumping as she played with them. "Dad, he's like the superhero of our house, right?" she said, hugging Max as she giggled. David paused, looking at the scene. Lily laughing, holding Max, who wagged his tail enthusiastically. "He is, sweetheart. He's our hero," he replied with a genuine smile. That night, before Lily went to bed, she insisted that Max sleep in her room. "Please, Dad, he always takes care of me," she pleaded. David looked at Max and nodded. "All right, but just for tonight, okay?" As David turned off the light, he stood for a moment in the doorway, watching Lily sleep peacefully with Max lying beside her bed. It was as if the dog knew exactly what his mission was. After closing the door, David sat in the living room and picked up an old photo of Max, taken the day they adopted him from the shelter. He remembered how, back then, he had almost chosen a different dog, but Max had looked straight into his eyes with those serious, loyal eyes. "You knew all along, didn't you, buddy?" he murmured to himself with a smile. From that day forward, David treated Max not just as a dog, but as a part of the family. He wasn't just a loyal companion, he was someone who had proven, through his actions, that true loyalty knows no bounds. Now tell me, what's the most special thing your dog has ever done for you? Or if you don't have one yet, have you ever thought about how much your life could change with such a loyal friend? Write it down in the comments. The next day, while watching Max in the yard as Lily played with him, David had an idea. "You've done so much for us, buddy. I think it's time you had someone to share the job with, huh?" he said as if Max could understand. David called Lily into the living room. "Sweetheart, what do you think about getting Max a friend?" Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "A new dog? Really, Dad?" "Yes, I think Max deserves some company. And so do you. Let's go to the shelter and see who needs a home." "How about that?" Lily jumped for joy, already imagining what the new dog would be like. When they arrived at the shelter, Max came along because David wanted to ensure the new family member would be a good match for him. Lily ran from one side to the other, pointing at different dogs. "Look at this one, Dad, and that one over there." As she got excited, David calmly looked at the dogs, remembering the day he chose Max, when the German Shepherd had looked directly into his eyes as if to say, "I'm the right one for you." "Dad, look at this one," Lily called out, breaking his train of thought. She stood in front of a pen where a medium-sized dog with black and brown fur wagged his tail shyly. He seemed young, but had a calm demeanor, almost as if waiting for Max's approval. David watched as Max sniffed the new dog carefully. After a few seconds, Max wagged his tail and walked away, as if to say, "He'll do." "I think we found our new friend," David said, smiling at Lily. The new dog, whom Lily named Buddy, was initially shy. Max kept a leadership stance, watching over Buddy as he explored the house. At first, Buddy followed Max everywhere, trying to learn the house rules. Within days, the tension eased. Buddy and Max began playing together in the backyard, running and sharing toys. Lily loved watching the two in action, and David felt the house was even more complete. One night while Lily slept, David watched the two dogs lying near the couch. Max was calm but kept his watchful gaze on the door. Buddy, on the other hand, mimicked Max, as if learning from him. David knelt down and petted both dogs. "I don't know how to thank you too. You're not just part of the family, you're our guardians." Max looked at him and then at Buddy, almost as if recognizing that he wasn't alone in protecting their home and family anymore. In the following days, the house was filled with new energy. Max and Buddy didn't just protect, they brought joy. And for David, knowing his family now had two guardians was a comfort he never realized he needed. Watching Max and Buddy running in the backyard, Lily turned to David and said, "Dad, we have the best family in the world, don't we?" David smiled, hugging his daughter. "Yes, sweetheart, and now we're stronger than ever." And so the story of David, Lily, Max, and now Buddy reminds us of something we may already know, but sometimes forget. Dogs aren't just pets. They're family with instincts so strong, they often see what we cannot. Max didn't need words to show how much he loved Lily and David. For Max, protecting his family wasn't a duty, it was a natural gesture, driven by the unconditional love dogs have for us. And Buddy, the newest member of the family, serves as a reminder that when we give love and security to these loyal companions, we receive so much more in return, the certainty that we'll never be alone. Now I want to ask you, the viewer, have you ever stopped to observe your dog? To them, you're their entire world. It's amazing how they're always attentive, ready to protect, comfort, and brighten our days. Dogs have an instinct that goes beyond what we imagine. They don't analyze, judge, or ask for anything in return. They simply love. So why not return that love today? Give them that extra belly rub, a game of fetch, or even just a moment of your undivided attention. And remember, heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they have four paws, a strong bark, and a heart bigger than the world. If you made it this far, share this video and help spread this story to more people. Just click share and pass on this amazing story.